If you're around my age, the question of what the world might look like in 100 years probably doesn't conjure up the nicest of images, or might be a question you avoid thinking about entirely. Personally, I can only remember being inundated with facts on how the world will end probably about halfway through my life. As a generation who grew up surrounded by signs and warnings of climate change, economic crises, war, famine, and a pandemic, I think it's natural that we've fallen into a mental health slump. But at the same time, history tells us that there is almost always some world threat on the horizon. So what makes us in particular so miserable? And is there a way we can change this? I think so, but I think you are going to be instrumental in it. Whenever I've spoken to someone who's been through major wars as a child or any sort of huge upheaval, I often find a huge sense of resilience and positivity in them, despite the upbringing, or maybe even in spite of the upbringing. My grandmother is one of the most positive people I've ever met, and at age 90 she still gets more done than I do. Baby boomers lived through the Cold War under constant perceived threat of nuclear obliteration, and came out of the other side to invent the internet, microscopes capable of viewing individual atoms, at-home dialysis machines that changed patients' lives, and motors that measure only 500 nanometers across. So small, you can do surgery on a grape. So what is different now? Why do our generation get labeled depressed and lazy, including by ourselves? The easy answer, of course, is sitting in your pocket right now, or more likely the portal to the void held in your hands that you're watching me through. But I don't believe that's the end of the story. Distractions and rage bait certainly help, and goddamn are they addictive, but I still think there's more merit to treating this as a symptom rather than the root cause. It is very tempting to lose yourself to the infinite scroll, surrendering yourself to the deepest void simply to escape reality for a few hours or days or weeks, sheltering ourselves from the outside dying world. But I think that last part plays a huge impact. In a dying world, there isn't much better to do than to appeal to your basest instincts. If you've ever been asked, or asked yourself, the hypothetical question of what would you do if the world was going to end tomorrow, I'm sure at some level you understand this. No one in that scenario is going to spend the day doing community service. But if phones are only the symptom, what is the cause? What happened to us that didn't happen to the baby boomers or generations before? Or maybe more accurately, what didn't happen? All throughout history, we have been fascinated with the future, and this plays a huge role in inspiring generations to come. Have you ever wondered why cars can't fly yet? I have, which is odd because that is a question more posed to the generations before me, whose media was flooded with wondrous glimpses into a technology-dominated hypercity future. Yet it was so prolific, much of that media, such as Marty McFly's iconic hoverboard, is still a hallmark of that view today. Growing up ourselves, though, something shifted. Excitement for what was to come was replaced with excitement for what was happening right now. Who cares about the future? We were living in it. And there is the crux of the problem, I think. Even through turmoil, humans have always pushed through by working towards a better future. Yet somewhere in the last 30 years, that shifted to working towards a better profit margin. We neglected to create those images and ideas of what could come next, instead of asking how much money we could make. So I think it falls on our generation to take a step back and do for ourselves what those that came before us didn't, and ask ourselves what this world could look like in 2100, the same way that generations before us had that blueprint laid out for them. En l'An 2000 is a series of French illustrations from the very turn of the 20th century, predicting a hopeful glimpse of the future mixed with traditions of the past. Boys and girls dressed in long stockings and hand-knit jumpers sit in a classroom while books are fed into a machine that seems to take the information and load it directly into their heads via futuristic helmets. A traditionally dressed French maid leisurely pulls along a device that cleans for her. Even many illustrations of propeller-driven aircraft being ridden by gentlemen and ladies wrapped in shawls reading newspapers, a full 3 years before the Wright brothers invented the first working models. It's a fascinating and breathtaking marriage of the idea that technology will improve, but not at the cost of what they held important and beautiful at the time. Unfortunately, in the past, this push of hope for the future would come from institutions, organizations, corporations, or even the government. It was a cohesive, organized effort of similar ideas and images. We don't have that, but in lieu, I think we can harness the constant hope our generation do have for decentralization, individualism, and the ability for one person to make a difference. Therefore, your brief of the future can look incredibly different to the next person's. But I think that once collected and collated, instead of a single image of the future, we can create a palette of colorful possibility to pull from when we do need to put the legwork in and progress as a community. So, what would NLAN 2100 look like? I think the solarpunk aesthetic, which arrived very recently, does a lot of heavy lifting, and there is a reason it has taken off as quickly as it has, even with as little content available as there is to explain it. It shows a positive future, the impossibility we've always faced. A world of technology married with nature, where the tech is only additive, used to make lives better and fueled renewably. Meanwhile, the vistas and views we're given are green and dense with nature, animals and plants thriving and living amongst us. Green cities and people with a truly believable sense of happiness from this balance between modern convenience and the beauty of nature. But there isn't enough of this media yet, and I think it's on us to create more, since clearly no one is going to do it for us. Your imagination of the future might not match up to mine, but together we can create a tapestry greater than any individual work. It's time to create a solid vision for ourselves to work towards. The idea of a world we'd like to live in, not one we seek to escape from into the depths of AI slop and people yelling at each other for not liking ketchup, or even worse, liking ketchup. There is a more beautiful world waiting for us, but it's one we have to envision before we can start to build it. So, before you continue on to the next video, internalizing the slight feeling of hope generated if I've done my job properly, and falling back into the infinite shitstorm of social media, ask yourself, why haven't we been given these same beautiful bits of inspiration so many generations before us have? Now, look back at your phone, at the blissful alternative to facing the constant pressure to be productive in a meaningless world, and realize that might be the answer in itself. Maybe they want you to have a hole where other generations had hope, in order to fill it with something more sinister. Is that truly the preferable distraction? Or could we distract ourselves with making visions of a world so much more beautiful than we have already? Go create something. Add to the world, bit by bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours.